A pleasure to be here with Anupama Mohan. Ma'am, welcome to the Kolkata Literature Festival. You're part of a session that talks about the novel and where it stands, the exact tenure of the novel today. So, as somebody who's understood literature for so long, where do you think the novel in Indian literature, particularly in Indian writing in English, is currently present today? What is its validity? What is its importance?
That's a great question. But I think that assumes that the Indian novel in English is in some kind of crisis when it's the total opposite. There is a superabundance of some lovely writers and some hard hitting novels. And particularly, I think possibly Indian writing in English is undergoing a kind of renaissance, especially from the social realist point of view. And certainly, the novel meeting speculative fiction has led to a whole range of new kinds of writing emerging, both for young adults, for older adults. And I think there is a great market not only for the writers of the novel, but also for the readers of the novel. So perhaps we are looking at a fantastic 21st century as far as the novel is concerned, and especially for India.
And what sort of angles or approaches are you expecting from the session given the panel that you have?
Um, the great thing about the session is that there are three very different kinds of writers on board, and our moderator Joshudra herself is a novelist. So I'm looking forward to a kind of eclectic conversation.
Do you think, and correct me if I'm wrong, for several years it seemed like we have an inferiority complex in terms of Indian writing in English, that even as voracious readers of English novels would prefer something that comes from the West? But do you think we've reached that threshold where it doesn't really matter if somebody is Indian, if they're writing from an Indian background, or if they're writing from a Western background, English readers would just read it anyway? Do you think the threshold has been crossed?
Right. I think here, we have to think of the threshold for whom. If you are a reader based in India, the threshold is very different. India is a heterogeneous country with multiple languages. And for my novel itself, for instance, written in English, but already I've had a few readers talk to me and tell me that it was a great translation. Because when they read it, I think they get the sense that it is a novel that was originally written in some other language, possibly Tamil, because the setting is in Tamil Nadu. And that, I think, is up to the writer. How immersive she makes the novel is entirely up to the writer, and it's also up to the reader to recognize the thresholds being crossed. So I think for Western audiences, perhaps Indian English still is a threshold to cross. Perhaps they do need a glossary. And especially for novelists who use a lot of local languages for color, for local color, maybe there is a threshold. But I think these are thresholds that are very crossable, and the whole point of the threshold is to cross it. So whether you are located in the West or you're located in India, reading is about crossing thresholds, and language is one of the thresholds. To cross it is an act of successful reading. To recross it and cross it several times over and over is to tell you and remind you that even though you're reading in one language, that one language is a stage that can reproduce many other sounds, many other words and images from different languages that people speak all over the world. I always wanted the novel that way to be polyphonic, to have many voices and many distinct voices. And I enjoy most novels that challenge me to imagine that kind of polyphony. Even within one language, it is possible to alert a reader to the multiple languages, multiple voices possible.
Wonderful. My final question is that as a professor of literature, how do you think young people, particularly in this city, are reacting to the novel? How much of an interest is there to even become novelists in the future, or critique them or research them?
Yes, as a professor of English, I have now, I should be honest here, I avoid teaching the novel. Partly due to paucity of time during every semester, but when I do teach a novel, and I've taught Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky for many semesters at Presidency, students love novels, okay? And I think the novel has a vibrant future, no matter what the language is, and especially given that the 21st century is seeing a new heyday for translation, I am very upbeat that students will read languages other than the ones that they are used to. And as we get students who are bilingual, trilingual, multilingual, they will read novels in their original tongues when possible, because novel reading is a kind of commitment. So I'm very hopeful that students uh, like reading it, and that has been my experience, and they respond to novel very well. That said, I think the challenge remains to keep the novel relevant. It's such a capacious genre. Everything fits into a novel. You can put 10 poems into it, as I did, and it would still be called a novel. So I think the trick is to make the novel a new beast every time. So it's a little bit about reinvention, but it's also about grabbing a reader's sensibility. And certainly with young people, I think the novel is doing great. I mean, young adult fiction is off the charts, isn't it?
I think the key is to keep the novel novel.
Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Have a great time at KLF.